Like I said just a few minutes ago, if you have something to take notes with, that would be good. Didn't have time to print out any handouts. So excited to jump into our conversation around strategy today. We're going to be talking about from vision to strategy. Now here's what I would say is kind of the nuance of what we're going to be talking about today is what you're not going to get from me is like a playbook of ABC, right? Just do these three things and then you're going to have a successful college ministry. But really what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about some principles, some frameworks that will help you evaluate your strategy and begin to say, okay, I think we need to focus on this area. I think we need to add this piece. I think we need to begin to build this out. So that's what we really want to work at today. So let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Andy Abramson. My number is on there. Would encourage you, if at any point you want notes, you have questions, if you want to jump on a call together, we can do and talk through that. I will at the end give you, I'll do a QR code for some additional resources. Now, let me kind of like warn you. We're going to do some quick flyby on some stuff. Literally on each of these pieces, we could go like 45, 50, 60 minutes on each of them. But what we're going to do is kind of give you the broad ideas. And if you want more conversation, that resource at the end will be some trainings that we've done that will help kind of build some of these pieces out. So I'll show you a quick picture of my family here. So this is myself, my wife, Jen, and our 5 kids. Couple of highlights about them. So I actually have twins. I started out with twins, Abby and Brooke here. Fun fact, Abby, who is a grad student in Southern California, her and I are jumping on a plane tomorrow morning to go to East Africa, to Uganda. So we're super excited about that. So I get to rush back tonight, finish packing, and then jump on a plane with her. So we get to work with some college leaders out there for the next couple of weeks, which I'm super excited about. So a little bit, just kind of, that's my family, a little bit of background. So I was a youth and college pastor for 13 years, 6 years in Portland, Oregon, 4 years just outside of Sacramento, California, and then 3 years in northern central Minnesota. And then back in 2010, we started an organization called Elementum. You can see we have a table down on the sponsor area down there. With really our heart is to help local churches engage with college students and young adults. We really believe, we love our brothers and sisters that are doing parachurch campus ministry, but we also believe that part of the role of the local church is to engage with the college campus and 20-somethings. And so we help them do that more effectively. We do some coaching, some collaborative sessions, some different things together. And so if you ever want to know more, a little bit about that, we can share about that as well. So what I want to do first is I want to talk to you about the difference between vision and strategy, okay? Because it's important for us to make sure that we're defining these things the same so you understand what we mean when we say strategy, what is vision, and then how do those things fit together? Because what I would argue is you need to have both of these things in your ministry, a solid vision, as well as a clear strategy to help you begin to move forward. And so here's the difference. When we talk about the difference between the two, vision is really this idea of a God-given picture of where you're going. Okay, so think about when you're casting vision for your ministry, and that can be maybe you as a point leader on a stage, but that even if you're like a small group leader or a one-on-one conversation, we still cast vision, right? We're giving people a picture of where we're going, what a preferred future looks like. So we're saying in 5 years, here's where we want our ministry to be. Here's what we want it to look like. Here would be some of the kind of the components of that. So when we're casting vision, we're giving people of a picture of where we're going. What we often see is vision is kind of the pull, right? It pulls people forward into the work that God is doing, inspires people to keep going and moving as we go to where God is calling us. So this is vision. The other side is strategy. And strategy, think about strategy as like being a map. It's a specific plan for how we're going to get there. So if vision is the picture of the end destination, the strategy is the map of how we're going to get to that vision. How are we going to accomplish where we're going in 5 years? So think of this big idea of how. And so think about vision as kind of the push that helps you move forward. Now, here's why I would say we need both of those things, okay? Because if you have a vision without a strategy, the tension that you're going to experience is that you have a clear picture, but you're not really sure if what you're doing is helping you get there. Like you're maybe doing certain things, but is it actually helping us get to where we want to get to, right? If you have a strategy without a vision, your calendar's full of doing all these things, but the question is it helping us get to where we want to get to? Right? So we want to have both of those things, the clear picture of this is where we're going, as well as this is how we're going to get to that destination that is going to accomplish the picture that we're giving. Okay, so what we're going to do today, here's one of the reminders that I really encourage leaders is activity isn't strategy. Having lots of things on your calendar doesn't mean you have a strategy. Because a lot of us, man, I ask a leader, I'm like, hey, we're super busy, right? You ever heard that before? Like, we're busy, right? But the question then is the things that we're doing, just because we're doing a lot of things doesn't mean that we have a clear strategy, okay? What I want to do is I want to give you kind of 5 questions that kind of lay out. Now, this is a process. Maybe some of you heard this process. There's a thing that we do with leaders called the vision frame. And the vision frame really has 5 different questions. And I'm going to show you kind of where these are. But then what I want to do is kind of highlight the red. And this is what we're working on today. So here's the 5 questions that we want to think about in terms of the nuts and the bolts in the direction of our ministry. Number 1 is, what are we doing? What are we doing? Think of this as the mission, okay? Like, what is the mission of your ministry? Now, here's what I want to say is what we have as believers, what I would consider as general mission. Okay, as we read the scriptures, we can see Matthew 22, Matthew 28, that our call is to love God, love people, make disciples. But here's what I would contend to you, that as a subset, as your community, you are called to do that in a unique way, right? Your community is called to do that in a different way, in a different context, with a group of people on mission together. And so think about general mission as kind of the umbrella. But as a subset of that, you're asking the question, what is our mission? How is God asking us to carry this forward? So this is one of the big questions. Number 2 is, why are we doing it? This is the values. Okay, values. This is like the heart motivation of why we do what we do. And so we want to think about these ideas of why are we doing it? Number 3 is, this is how are we doing it? This is the strategy. Think about this as being the map we're going to talk about today. Number 4 is, when are we successful? These are the measures. And then number 5 is, where is God taking us? This is the vision. Okay, here's what I would encourage you to do as a leader. We are going to talk about number 3 today. But I would encourage you not to go too long without answering these other questions. In fact, what would it look like for you to sit down with your leadership team and say, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? When are we successful? Where is God taking us? Okay, so this is kind of, I wanted to show you this strategy. You can see the strategy and the vision are 3 and 5, but what I would say is there's still another 3 questions I would encourage you to look through. Now, here's what I want to look at today. Okay, I want to look at 3 different tools with 3 questions that you can use to uncover your strategy and where you need to develop your strategy as a ministry. Okay, so here's kind of tool number 1 is going to be what we call ministry stages. And ministry stages is this question of, what are we actually building out? Okay, and we'll talk about the stages of ministry as we begin to focus. The second one is we're going to talk about discipleship spaces. Discipleship spaces. What environments do you actually need? So we're going to talk about different types of environments that are used to disciple students and young adults. And we're going to have you begin to analyze those different discipleship spaces. The last one, we're going to use a framework of upper room, lower room. Where in the house are your people and how do you move them? Okay, so here's the analogy that we're going to use today. And if you spend some time, you'll hear this on maybe some of our trainings. We're going to use this picture as ministry as being a house. Okay, and we're going to talk about how we build this house. We're going to talk about the nuances of the different spaces in this house. We're going to look at what are the environments that help disciple people in this house. We're going to think about what does it look like in our ministries to think about some of the different pieces of the house. Okay, so let's walk through this. The first one is we're going to talk about stages, the stages. Okay, so we're actually in this process right now. We're looking for property. And we're considering, some building options that we want to do in the Austin, Texas area. And if you were to sit down with me and ask me the question, okay, Andy, what's your plan? And I were to tell you this. Okay, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a roof. Okay, then after I build a roof, I'm going to paint the kitchen. Then after I paint the kitchen, I'm going to pour the concrete. After I pour the concrete, I'm going to do some decoration in the living room. You look at me and think, bro, you're an idiot. Like, that's not how you build a house. Like, there's a progression and an order that we want to think about. The problem is sometimes we build ministries like that. We do a little bit of work on the roof and then a little bit of the work on the foundation, and then we go in and paint the bathroom, and we kind of hop around. And the problem with that is if you were trying to do a house that way, it would be much slower. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to walk through with you what are 6 different stages of ministry, and here's what I want you to listen for. I want you to listen for what stage of ministry are you currently in. Because based off of the stage of the ministry, it will help you focus on what does building your strategy actually look like. Okay, so these are the 6 stages that we walk through with different churches. And so let me just kind of show you these one by one. Okay, so the first one here is what we call stage 0. Okay, stage 0 is what we would consider as the preparation stage. So if you're going to build a house, the first thing you're not going to do is just start building, right? You're actually going to prepare the ground for the work. You need to make sure that it's level. You got to make sure that the big tree that's going to be in your kitchen is knocked down. You got to prepare the work. When we have a church that'll come to us and say, hey, we want to start a college ministry. We want to start a young adult ministry. One of the things we have them do before we give them a hammer and give them some nails and some wood, we say, what does it look like actually to prepare some of the ground for the work that you're going to do? Okay, so think about clearing the ground, starting a missional presence. Here's a couple things that I would encourage you. For those of you, maybe a couple of you feel like you're in the stage 0. The last session, we had a couple people in this. Think about things like who is going to be the leader? Like, is there a leader that's going to begin to move this forward? Is that leader actively engaging in relationships through discipleship? Is there regular rhythms of connecting with college students and getting to know? So there's some initial things that we want to do that we would consider stage 0 before we begin to build things. Stage 1 is what we're going to call the foundation stage. Okay, foundation stage, some of those things are building a core team, defining your disciple-making strategy. So we're beginning to think about this as like pouring the foundation of the house, the concrete that the house is going to get built on. We see some of these things that are essential for building. Do you have a team? Right? Do you have other leaders? Do you have an intentional way in which you're going to disciple college students? When all of a sudden a freshman shows up on your campus, what are you going to do with them? Do you understand, what the process looks like? So this is the foundation stage. Number 2 is what we call the framing stage. Okay, this is vision clarity. Those 5 questions that I gave you are what we do in stage 2. Okay, we actually think about how do we make sure that everybody is understanding what are the nuts and the bolts of the house? What does the framing look like? Okay, stage 3 is what we call systems and structures. What are some of the processes? What are some of the pipelines? Leadership development. We want to begin to build out some of those pieces. Stage 4 is multiplying. This is where we see multi-generational disciple making. So if you disciple somebody, has that person turned around and now discipling somebody? We want to see multiple levels of multi-generational disciple making, and then others leading what you've started. So there's ownership that is dispersed. And then number 5 is what we call sending. Now, this could look like church planting, new campuses. It could just be releasing students, right, of sending them to be missionaries, or, they're going to Dallas to be in law or education. So how are you missionally even sending these people? So here are the 6 different stages of the ministry. Okay, so here's what we see, that most leaders are operating a stage or 2 ahead of where they actually should be. A lot of times as we do diagnosis with different churches, we see them building out pipelines when they don't have a solid foundation. We see them sending when they don't have any systems. And so often what we see is ministries that are working and kind of a couple ahead of where they actually should be. So here's the question I want to do, and I'll go back to that one screen, but I want you to turn to a person next to you and answer these questions. What stage is your ministry actually in? Okay? Not where you wish it was. Where's it really at as you analyze it? And then what's one piece of evidence that confirms where you're at? Okay, so take a couple minutes, grab a person next to you. I'll put these back on so you can see them. What stage are you actually in, and what's some evidence that would kind of help you, why you determine that? Okay, so turn to somebody next to you a couple minutes. Go ahead and share those things. Okay, go for it.
Where do you think you're at?
Very absolutely strategy and things that we do. Really, those relationships are observing what's going on here, and then what's that. And then after those few months, I kind of felt in the disciple making culture, the growth, and this is the culture that we're prayer culture, and into this started there's a 40 where I want to I haven't fully developed strategy for that. So I felt that was a little bit of a structure does this not work? It's not. It's still here. So I would say let's do that. So there's no question.
Okay, one more minute. If you haven't switched, make sure you do that.
I would say like not fairly confident, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you see, there's
Okay, so the first question we want to analyze is stages. Here's the second build we want to look at is we want to talk about what environment. This is a conversation around discipleship spaces, okay? Here's the recognition, and this is a really helpful tool that we've used with lots of leaders that look at what are different types of spaces that we create to disciple students in different ways, right? Here's the recognition that not one space has the ability to totally disciple somebody, right? That we need different types of environments, different things that are being done that will help us. So what I want to do is I want to walk through with you first 4 different discipleship spaces. Then from this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about some of the kind of the missteps and the gaps that we see. Okay, this is actually taken from a book, Discipleship That Fits by Alex Absalom. And this is a really helpful tool. Now, here's what I want to say. I'm going to give you some numbers, but these numbers are not hard, fast numbers. Okay, these are just kind of generalities. Okay, so let's talk about first what we would call public spaces. Public spaces. So this would be, think about public spaces as like large group gatherings. Often these can be worship services, Sunday morning, campus worship. These can be conferences. Even the spaces that we've been in together in the main sessions are like public spaces. Okay? What public spaces will help create for people are 3 things: inspiration, proclamation, and momentum. Okay, so we think about these spaces, some of these kind of large gathering spaces, where there's inspiration for us as people as we're being formed, there's proclamation of God's word, and then there's momentum that are being built in. You think about like Sunday morning, right? We think about even here, you think about maybe Commons Conference in January. These are opportunities of public spaces where we help build inspiration, proclamation, and momentum of what the outcomes are. Okay, so then the next one is what we would consider like a social space. We'll just say 20 to 75. I would say that this one is the most probably fluid of all of them. But here's what the social spaces help produce is belonging, mission practice, and family culture. Okay, so think about like belonging as a way of connecting casually with people. Hey, I know your name, you know my name, I know a little bit about you, you know a little bit about me. We talk about mission practice because this is a great place for people to utilize their spiritual gifts, or even for this size to go on mission together. You know, sometimes you'll do a mission outreach and you can see some of the impact that you can make with when you have a social size space of 20, 30 people that are going and serving at a homeless shelter together. And then the last one is family culture, okay? The third space is what we would call the personal space. Think about this as about 5 to 20. The 3 things that we see from a personal space is closeness, support, and challenge. Okay, so now closeness, there's a little bit deeper level of relationship. It's not just knowing your name, knowing my name, but I know a little bit more about you. There's some opportunities now to speak into each other's life in a more direct way, to challenge each other, to follow the word, challenge each other to be on mission together. And then there's a mechanism of even support. Maybe that you've been in a small group before and all of a sudden you have to move apartment complexes and your group's like, oh, we'll help, right? We'll come around and support you as a person. Or I've been in small groups, you know, when we were all having babies and we'd have somebody have a baby and let's do a meal train together, and everybody would support each other because there's a level of support that this environment can have. The last one is what we call the intimate space, okay? About 2 to 5, we see transparency, accountability, and formation. So think about like accountability partners or like really confession of sin. Like these are more intimate moments where we're directly speaking into somebody's life. We know, man, what makes them tick. We know like who they are as a person. We know their struggles. And so we think about transparency, accountability, formation. So what we see from this is not one space can do all of these things, right? Sometimes as ministry leaders or ministries, we need to recognize that there are different parts of the things that are going on in the house that are going to help develop students and young adults in a different way. Now, let me give you a couple different ways in which we see some kind of missteps in this. The first one is when we are having a certain size, but trying to get a different outcome. I'll use an example. So one of the guys here, Trey Etter, we were talking, he was running a Sunday school class when he was at his former church in Waco, and there were probably maybe 30, 40 people in their Sunday school class. And he was trying to get closeness, challenge, and support in that group. And he was just really having a hard time, right? Of just like, well, we got all these people and I'm trying to get this like closeness to them. And they're just kind of like, it's really hard to do. Or another that I've seen is, you ever been in a very small worship environment where you have maybe 12 or 15 people and then half of them walk on the stage to do a performance and there's like 6 of them left in the audience and you're like, this is kind of weird. Like half the people are up there, half of us are down here, and it just kind of feels odd because they're trying for the inspiration, proclamation, momentum, but really the space is more designed for closeness, challenge, support. Okay, so that's one way, is where we have kind of misalignment in what we're trying to produce in our different spaces. Here's the other one, duplication, where we do multiple things over and over again. I'll give you an example. One of the leaders who used to come to Roundup, but he moved to Arkansas, his name was Cross Bright, and I did a ministry analysis with him. And when I heard about his ministry, he was sharing with me, on Sunday mornings, we got about 15, and we have a Sunday school class together. And then so as a personal space. And then on Sunday night, everybody comes over to our home and we have a second personal space of a Bible study. Then on Thursday night, we have a campus Bible study. That's a third personal space in 1 week. So what he was doing was duplicating multiple times the same type of environment. So they had a lot of closeness, support, challenge, but not a lot of other things. So you actually had to flip some of those other environments and repurpose them to actually do different things. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's what my encouragement for you. The pressure could be, oh man, we got to do all 4 of those, right? I don't think I have time to do all 4. Here's our encouragement to leaders. Start with 2 spaces. Start with 2 spaces. Build them really well. And then add in a third or fourth only when you can get 2 healthy and it's not all dependent on you. Okay? So take the pressure off of your ministry and say, Andy said we got to have a worship service and we got to do small groups and we got to do D groups and we got okay, just take the pressure off. The encouragement is just do 2 of them really well. Okay, just do 2 of them. And here's what I would say, is sometimes we can actually outsource or think about a less frequency of having some of those spaces. So a couple times when I was doing this a couple sessions ago, we talked about like Sunday morning can be a public space. So maybe you don't need to have a separate public space because that's happening on Sunday morning. Maybe there's a quarterly all-campus worship night where you're together. Maybe there's some combined events that you do with another church that becomes more of that, the social space, right? Where you're coming together and there's like 40, 50 of you playing a pickleball tournament. So there's ways in which you don't have to do everything, but you can think creatively about outsourcing or with less frequency beginning to create some of those spaces. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Go ahead and turn to the person next to you. Which spaces do you currently have in your ministry? Which one or ones are missing, or which ones are the weakest? Right? So as you kind of analyze the spaces, which spaces do you currently have? Which ones are missing or weakest? And I'll go back to this right here so you can see it. I want you to take a couple minutes and discuss with the person next to you. Okay, go for it.
I think we're
I would say it's like a stress.
So which spaces do you currently have? And then which ones are either missing or weak as you analyze them?
Because I would just talk about
As in, you have the.
I think one of them may hold one of the empires, I think one of them.
yeah, so I'll put two things here or just
There's this. So the biggest thing that I think is like, I think like you're saying, like, so that it's on Sunday morning, like, worship party, there's one else. It seems like it's like everyone's different. I think the car has that thing. The out of these, I think the one that you, the biggest one is probably just personal. Like, even though we're having a fight, I really don't. It's mostly like a, so like a vision behind that. It's still a Bible study, but it's over here, so there's still flavors, it's their discussion, questions. But sometimes it either focus on or.
So that would be the first question.
Yes. Yeah, but I think sometimes it calls for information transit rather than like or clean or. So I think it's sometimes it needs.
So the question is. So I think just because we got to take purchase and the for years, so that's just.
This is the most immediate. Mine are going, this is the most immediate. For example, can be done
Okay, about one more minute here.
transform. It's like the whole then they're going to default. So like, what does it mean to stand with those leaders and do the meeting with those leaders? Will I do
But not like purposeful. Yeah, it's totally. Yeah.
So when people walk in,
This is still a lot of birds, but eventually there's that. Like sometimes public people like have to, and they're always like. And then right now.
what do they really do? Do they need to accept the loans?
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to cut off at the pass a couple questions that I usually get on this. Okay, so let me just kind of set these. One of them is that we think that teaching and worship can only happen in the public space. Okay, so we're like, well, Andy said, then we can never have worship and teaching, right? Here's my encouragement. You actually can do that, but the way that you structure it is different in each one, right? So you can actually have worship and speaking, but it's different if the purpose is belonging and family than it is inspiration proclamation, right? So you can actually do, it doesn't mean that only speaking and worship can happen in a public space. We just try to structure it differently depending on, sometimes we've had really small worship events of 5, 10, 15 people in a living room, and we're trying to get that closeness together and support together. Like, we structure it differently, okay? The second question is, a lot of people will ask is, what about like having multiple spaces on one night? Okay, so maybe you say we do a public and then we break into personal. Okay, that's great. Here's what I would say is, if it gets to be more than 2, it gets really muddled. So if you try to go public and social and intimate, it's a little bit too much for one day, for one night or one morning. So often you can kind of like overlap by having 2, but usually our recommendation is don't go more than 2 in terms of like what you're trying to do in one environment. So those are a couple questions we get that I just wanted to kind of hit right away out of the gate. Okay, so here's the third one. Where in the house? Here's build number 3 is where in the house. Okay, so we're going to ask this question. In our strategy, depending on where people are at in the house, will determine what we do differently with each of them. Okay, so in this house, what we're going to call this house is there's a training that we do called upper room, lower room. Okay, and I'm not going to do the full kind of breakdown of it. There's some different things that we do, but here's what I would say when we think about upper room and lower room. Upper room is where you have family. Okay, these are people who are not consumers, they're actually contributors. So we just sold a house in Austin. We're renting right now. I told you the plan is to build. We had a 2-story house. So if you went into the upper room of our house, we function much differently as a family up there. Right? You might go up and my daughter Riley might have an ice cream bowl on the counter or the side table from the night before. You might go into Macy's room and there'll be some clothes on the ground. We go upstairs and it's not a big deal as family, right? We just kind of know that even if there's clothes or it's messy or whatever, we're family together and we don't need to kind of, have a relationship where we're all kind of put together. But this is family. Think about the lower room functions differently. So if we invite guests into our home, our lower room, Saturday afternoon, if we're having people on Sunday after church, it's all hands on deck, right? We're going to clean the kitchen. We're going to clean the bathrooms. We're going to make sure that there's no dog hair on our couches because we want people to feel comfortable. We're inviting them as guests into our house, and our job is to minister to them, to care for them, to feed them, to love them, to have conversations. They're not family, right? And so think about the 2 different parts of your house of saying there's the upper room, which is the family components of people who are like, we're in this together. And then there's the lower room of people that may come in and out and might be the guests and you want to minister and care for them and feed them. But what I want to talk about is in this 5 different areas in the house and even what we're doing in those different areas. Okay, so in one area, we have people that are outside the house, right? So we have this college campus right here, and there's all these people that are outside the house. And so the question in terms of strategy for these people is, are we intentionally trying to reach them? Are we moving outside of the house and engaging them on their turf? I was at a conference one time in Portland, Oregon, and it was interesting. One of the guys said in the conference, he said, it's interesting how often as us as believers, we ask unbelievers to be the missionary to come to us. Right? So we want them to feel uncomfortable and them to cross cultural barriers to come into our space versus us being the missionary and to go out on the college campus, to go out into the city, to go out into spaces. And so we think about the strategy with those outside the house. Are we intentionally trying to reach them? And do we have a presence among them, right? So then the next space in there is going to be like the doorway. This is going to be as kind of new people that are coming in. We ask the question, is our front door accessible? And do people know what to do once they get there? You ever been a new person where you walk in where it's not very clear what you're supposed to do? You just kind of like go against the wall because that's the safest thing that you can do. And you just kind of look around and you're like, I don't really know what to do here, right? And so as new people are first entering into the house, do we know how to engage with them and where they're supposed to go? Okay, then we talk about the lower room or inside the house. Is there a difference between people who attend and people who actually belong? Part of our role with people into the lower room is, do we know them? Can we connect with them? Do they feel cared for? Do they feel welcome? Like, we want to look at the people in the lower room of the house of asking this question, do they actually belong? Do they actually feel cared for? Okay, number 4 is going to be the staircase. Do we have an intentional disciple-making pathway, or is it accidental? Okay, one of the things we talk about is our disciple-making strategy functionally is the staircase that we build from the lower room to the upper room, where the family can come downstairs, invite, minister care, but also begin to walk new family into the upper room, casting vision for kingdom living and disciple making. And so this staircase is an intentional disciple making pathway, or is it accidental? And then the upper room is, are you producing disciple makers or just disciples? One of the key distinguishers of somebody who's in the upper room is they are a disciple maker, right? You can go to them and say, hey, I want you to go over there to this person and connect with them and begin to disciple them. And they actually know what to do. They've experienced it. They've lived that journey, and now they can turn around and do it as well. Okay, so talk about these 5 spaces, kind of areas of the house. Outside, the doorway; inside the house, the staircase and the upper room. Here's just a quick kind of call out. The staircase is the strategic gap in almost every ministry. Okay, it's so interesting to me when I do a ministry analysis call with most leaders. Often what I find is there's a group of leaders who are in the upper room. They're doing a decent job of engaging the campus, inviting people in the lower room, but they're not really clear on how they get people from the lower room to the upper room. What does that look like? What is the rhythm? What is the content? What does it look like relationally to walk alongside people? And so I would say that that staircase is the biggest strategic gap that we see in almost every ministry. Okay, so here's what I want you to do is go ahead and look at these 5 areas. Which one, if you got serious about it, would change everything? So when you look at these 5 different parts of the house and how we engage people, which is the one, man, if you began to focus maybe the next year on kind of this part of the house, it actually would build momentum to the entire ministry. Okay, so look at the 5 areas. Which one, if you got serious, would change everything? I'll go ahead and put that back on the screen. So go ahead and discuss with the person next to you. Go for it.
Are they still doing that?
Give us new thoughts. Spiritually.
Let's say they're getting there. I think they need to try.
Okay, about 2 more minutes here. 2 more minutes.
And I can make them. As a whole, working good. There's some difference. And we just lost fire. Yes, and then this is like, no. Definitely not what it's doing.
He's the middle side.
I'm just out of
Great employees. Which are still good things coming.
Okay, one more minute here. One more minute.
Overall,
Yeah, no, but like how, you know, really wants the board of it.
Like you
There's like,
there's a concept.
just like, you know, sometimes how you know, it's like, that's true, that's the hard work. Sorry.
Make eye contact.
And like, that's personally, those are for goal. I don't know that it's
It makes a difference when they compare.
and I like the idea of that, but I feel like the text is better. Actually, systems like
Lower rule of
being very individual, watching the door.
Okay, a couple things, and then we're going to open it up for some questions here. Actually, here's what we're going to do next is I want you to take 10 minutes here, and I want you to do some personal reflection. Okay, I'm just kind of synthesizing some of the things we talked about here. Number one is what's your actual ministry stage? What's one piece of evidence? Okay, you should have kind of identified that in your conversation. The 2 discipleship spaces most strategic for you right now, right? So if you were to really double down on 2 of them, what would it be that you really think would help you in your strategy build out? And then the big one is in one 90-day priority, what do you think is the single most important thing that you can build next? Right, so think about the summer and the opportunity to begin to build in your ministry. What would you say is that thing that if you focused on in the next 90 days would really build momentum as you head into the fall? Okay, so let's just do like 5 minutes or so. Let's do some personal reflection. We'd love for you to jot, kind of synthesize some of the things we've been talking about before you walk out of here. And then we'll open it up for some questions, okay? So 5 minutes, go for it. Okay, about 1 more minute here. Okay, just a couple things, and then we'll open it up for questions. Just a reminder that strategy is stewardship, right? That strategy is stewardship, that you're actually stewarding your time, your energy, your resources. You're stewarding your students and young adults' time, energy, and resources. And so think about strategy as really stewarding people. Vision is the picture, right? That's the picture that we want to cast for people. Strategy is that plan of how we're going to accomplish that vision. You probably already have that picture today. Our hope is that you would build that plan. Okay, a couple resources for you. Would love for you to pass, just to kind of pass along, go a little bit deeper in this. Here's a quick, just kind of, just shout out is, after you put in your email, we'll send that email right away. There also will be like a, hey, awesome, you did it, woohoo. And on the bottom of that is a link into our community where we send more resources. And so if you want to jump into our Elementum community, we'd love for you to do that as well. We're always doing different resources and passing them along. It's a great spot to connect with other leaders, etc. Okay, so questions, we'd love to open it up for a few minutes. What are some questions you have on any of these kind of 3 major frameworks we used, or thinking a little bit more about your context? Is there something that you need help kind of distilling or identifying? Would love to open it up for a few minutes if there's questions.
Who do you involve in the building?
Who do we involve in the building in terms of like key people? Yeah, I would say, for sure leaders need to be in on that process. And then I would involve any kind of, if you have some kind of students who are in the upper room, people who are family, I would invite them into at least giving input into that process to help you think about building out the strategy. So leaders for sure, and then maybe selected upper room students or young adults who can kind of help shape and guide and give input to that. Okay? This is always the hardest one, the last breakout. Like everybody's brains are so like full. They're like, oh, just need to make it to the end. Anything else? Any other questions?
Whenever you talk about like the foundation, like building a core team and all that, but you also at the end you talk about like strategy, stewardship, and vision as the picture.
Yep.
What are other ways that can tie into building something new, but also being able to like have the outside house, like reaching out to those as well?
Yeah. Say that question one more time, just so make sure that I'm tracking with
I
you.
guess just like combining, like building a core team.
Yep.
doing a new
Some of the foundation.
But having that stewardship involved and the vision involved, what are
Yep.
more ways to be able to reach the people outside the house?
Yeah. What I would say is that we can't do everything all at once, right? So it's like, it goes back to that kind of that picture I said of like, we got to do things in sequence. So sometimes if you're building a foundation, it might limit certain other things that you're saying, well, that's a couple steps away. And so I would think about sequence of saying like, yeah, maybe we want to reach more or do outward or outside the house, but we don't have any people in the upper room, right? So if you don't have any people in the upper room, it's going to be really hard to go outside the house and engage. So you got to think through even sequence of like, what do we need to say yes to and what do we say not yet to? that's going to help us kind of get there down. And so it's really kind of a sequencing answer.
So we're taking it slow and being patient with it.
Slow, patient, understanding the sequence is a huge one. I think one of the big things is people shotgun it. Like always the danger of coming to a conference like this is you can go to breakout sessions that actually help you build out a sequence. Right? You can go to something of like, here's the one example. So I was actually up at Redeemer Church a couple years ago, doing some breakout sessions up there for a collegiate church planting conference. And Brandon, I think some of you know Brandon, who's at Redeemer, he was doing a breakout session. And I was just sitting in, I wanted to listen to him. So I sit down next to this guy and I'm like, tell me a little about your ministry. And he's like, yeah, I'm brand new on Texas Tech. And, I'm starting this brand new campus and we got like 5 students and we're trying to build things. Well, the breakout session that we were in was building a leadership pipeline. Okay. So we sit in this breakout session and we're listening. And I turn to him at the end and I'm like, what'd you think of that? And he's like, I figured it out. I'm like, what'd you figure out? He's like, I need to build a leadership pipeline. And I'm like, bro, you need to build a leader. You don't need a pipeline. You need a leader, So sometimes if we get focused on the wrong things, it actually distracts us. So patience, sequencing, understanding the sequence, and being hyper-focused on saying, we'll get there, but not quite yet. Yep.
And you just speak to the definition of success sometimes in our mind,
Yep.
where we think this is successful, and where that continuum as we struggle with that.
Yeah. Here's what I would say is like, I think that success a lot of times in college ministry is defined on how many people in the lower room you have. Right? So how big we can get our ministries and how many people are coming in and out. But I actually think the definition of success is less about the lower room and more about the upper room. Like how many students that when they graduate, they go from our city to a new city, immediately find a church home, live on mission, get engaged in community. Like that's success, right? How many of them are disciple makers? How many of your students could you actually go and say, I want to challenge you this next semester to turn around and pour your life into 2 other people? How many of them could actually do that? So I think a lot of times our fascination in ministry is the person who has the biggest lower room. And I actually think that there's more successful ministries that I've seen that might have smaller lower rooms, but a really full family, a really full upper room. And so I would encourage you to think about some of those upper room things as actually the measure of success, not just how many people are attending or coming in and out of the house casually that are consumers. Anything else?
What do you think when you talk about the discipleship spaces?
Yep.
What do you think is the one that maybe churches miss out on or like overlook?
I say it's the intimate space for sure.
Okay.
I think that we do pretty well in the personal space by putting small groups. We do pretty good in social spaces of creating a pickleball event or, whatever, or missions trip. I think all of us are mesmerized by having a public space. That's the win for us in college ministry. If we get a midweek, right, that has a worship band and I'm the speaker, then that's the win. I think the one that is the most missing is going to be that intimate space. Accountability, intimacy, being known and knowing somebody deeply is the one I think that's the missing the most. And I actually think that that's the one that really helps in the disciple-making strategy cultivate people into the upper room the fastest. I think more intimate spaces. Now, it's harder to get somebody in an intimate space. It takes a level of trust and relationship, right? Before we can, you don't just take a random freshman who walks in and be like, hey, bro, you want to do accountability every Thursday morning? And they're like, no. But it takes a level to get there. But when we can get them there, we see the fastest acceleration and growth of those students is the intimate space. So I would say that that's the one that's probably a lot of the gap in college and young adult ministries right now. Okay, I think that's it. Let me pray for us. We'll be done. I think we have a little bit of break before the last main session together. So Lord, thanks for the opportunity to stop and just kind of peel back the layers of our ministry. I pray for the different leaders in this room as they wrestle through the strategy of the implementation and the fulfillment of the vision that you've given them for their campuses, for their church, for their communities, that you continue to just walk alongside of them and the build out of that and the plans. God, give real wisdom and discernment. And so thanks for our time together here today. We love you so much in your son's name. Amen.